Today I'm going to talk about some research that we're doing at the Augmented Reality Center at Miami University. When I talk about augmented reality, I could easily spend 16, 24 hours on it, so I thought we'll focus in on some things that I'm really passionate about right now, but I'd be happy to take other questions about completely other topics as we get through this. But I am a computer science and software engineering professor at Miami University, been there about 12 years, and you know, I was an algorithms person. I was a theory person. And when I came to Miami, they needed someone to teach our ethics course. And I started teaching this ethics course, and it turned out that that was a lot of fun. But I needed a technical area of research where there were really scary things happening, so I could do ethics and I could do technical research at the same time. And augmented reality has turned out to be a really good area for that. So I want to talk about just a few of the things that we're doing, a few of the things that we're interested in. Augmented reality is something that there are lots of misconceptions about. I think very soon that's going to go away. But one of my big problems in my research is just getting people to know what augmented reality is and what it isn't. What augmented reality is, Ronald DeZuma is the founding sort of thinker in this area, and he defines it as a system that supplements the real world with virtual objects which seem to coexist in the same space as the real world. And you got to have all those parts. This is a great example. I think this was made at Cornell. So this is a military mechanic repairing a weapons system, and he's wearing a head-mounted display that's connected to an Android smartphone, and it is superimposing some helpful graphics on top of the real world. It's showing him what to do next, go get this tool, crank this thing. And this is a fantastic application. If you take your car, I drive a Honda, so if I go to a Honda dealer and I give the mechanic my car, that mechanic works on that same car all day, every day, has everything memorized. And those cars are very similar. But if you're a military mechanic, how many military or ex-military folks we got here? Okay. Thank you for your service. And thank you for coming to Miami afterwards. So my uncles were military mechanics, and some of these weapon systems, there may only be 7 of them in the whole world. And of course, there's a maintenance manual that looks like this. So if you're repairing something like that, you spend a lot of time flipping through, doing a step, flipping through. With this system, it's all automated. This speeds things up a lot. It reduces errors a significant amount. And there's some, when I talk about why do we do augmented reality, now those of you who have been my students, you've seen this slide before. Shut up, laugh anyway. I think of the promise of augmented reality being making the computer do the things the computer is good at and getting the human to do the parts the human is good at. Now obviously there's some things that we're really bad at. If I ask you how many Nancy Drew books are on this shelf, you're going to have to go up and count. Your vision system and your brain were not designed to say 57 and go to the next thing. At least most of us can't do that. But there's some things where being human is awesome. Throwing and catching a ball, wow, it's hard to get computers to do that. Juggling, this guy's juggling 5 balls. There are lots of people that can juggle 5 balls. There are very few robots and computers that can juggle 5 balls. So here's the sort of dad joke. I have a 4.5-year-old. What's the least expensive way to develop a robot that can juggle 5 balls? And the answer is pay this guy $100,000 a year and wrap him in aluminum foil. That is going to be way cheaper than really actually. So humans are good at things. Let's use them for what they're good at. Path planning, picking, manipulating, predicting trajectories. Humans are great at. We're not good at quickly counting lots of stuff. Computers are good at that. Let's use the computers for that. And when I first started giving these talks, most people had no clue about augmented reality, but everyone almost has seen this first down marker. And you know that that's not real, but it is superimposed on the field in a way where it seems to live in the real world. As they move the camera to different points of view, that line stays right where it's supposed to be on the field. So this is a great example. Virtual object seems to live in the real world, integrates with real objects in a natural way. This is another project I really like. This is something called the Turing machine. So there's a computer nerd joke. Where you put on a head-mounted display, and you can walk through this college campus where they built this, and you can turn the dial and view it at any period in history. What did it look like in 1805, 1855, 1905? get a historical view, see how the campus has changed. Now, Ronald Azuma would say augmented reality is all about vision. I think it is helpful to think about the other senses. There's not as clear a definition of augmented reality for other senses like touch and sound, hearing. But this is a project I really like. This guy who's really kind of an artist developed this belt that has 8 buzzers in it. Wear it around your waist. Whichever buzzer is most directly pointing north, just vibrates, just all the time. So as you turn, it continually gives you a sense of where north is. And one of the projects that he reported on doing, he was a hiker, and as an artist, sat down one day and said, I'm going to try to draw my hiking trail from memory. We could all think about doing, okay, here's the path that I would take. And then he tried walking the trail with this on and realized there's a lot more kinks and curves and bends and snarls in a real path than what we remember in our memory. We remember something that's much smoother. So the experiment he did is hiking the trail, I don't know how long, maybe a couple of weeks, wearing this belt, and then doing the same exercise, and he was able to get all that detail. So he's augmented his sense of direction through sense of touch. But it often gets confused with lots of other stuff. So this is not augmented reality. Why? Because this guy's in virtual reality, but he doesn't care about the real world. It's completely immersive. There's no integration of the virtual with the real. It's purely virtual. So it's great. I love it, but it's not augmented reality. I had a colleague say to me, hey, my students are working on this great augmented reality app. We have a map, and when you turn, the map rotates to match whatever way you've turned. That's cool, but that's a map, right? Augmented reality, virtual objects with real objects. There's no real objects here. There is a map. That's great. It's location aware, and that's probably the right solution to this problem. But just because augmented reality is the hottest buzzword, you don't have to do it. I had someone tell me, hey, my grandpa had that in his 1989 Buick. And there were a whole bunch of American cars in the late 80s and early 90s that had this kind of speedometer and mileage and gas display. And this one's a little bit trickier because indeed there are virtual objects and there's the real world, but they don't appear to live in the same space. This is purely a heads-up display. When the car turns, your speedometer doesn't stay back there on the road. It's always in the same place. So there's no meaningful interaction between the real objects and the virtual objects. This is also, by the way, why Google Glass was not at all about augmented reality. What Google Glass was a heads-up display you wore all the time. I have one in my office. I'm actually not allowed to sell it to you, apparently, but some folks know that I wore it for a year, and I got to the point where I just couldn't make myself charge it because the only thing I was using it for was the clock. And so if you were talking to me, and the way that you turn on the clock is you go like that. So if you're talking to me, I'd be like, hey. Like, no, I'm trying to get rid of you. I'm trying to look at the clock. But I'm here to tell you, it may well be that this month is the beginning of the augmented reality era. And I didn't expect it to happen this quickly. A year ago when students were asking me, when is augmented reality going to be a real thing? I'd say, it could be next year, but 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, could be. And so the first thing I have to show to you, this is the first real augmented reality headset that is actually available for people to get their hands on. Now, it's not easy. You have to write an essay, and they have to pick you. But this is Microsoft HoloLens. And we haven't actually used it in any projects yet, so I'm just going to show you kind of a basic demo of what it does. So first of all, Microsoft has obviously already invested a ridiculous amount of money in this product. It is very polished. It is very comfortable to wear. It looks fantastic. It looks better than it looks on this screen. But what you're seeing right now is a live view with a slight delay of what I'm seeing. And so what this is a head-worn device that superimposes holograms over the real world, and it is gesture and voice controlled. So for example, I can This gesture is called bloom, like a blooming flower, and it's going to open a menu. I can click on something and make a window, and I can stick it onto the wall up here, maybe behind me. This headset is all the time making a three-dimensional mesh of the room, so it knows where the walls and where the desks are. It does not look this jumpy and wobbly in my vision. It's actually super, super stable. And so I could basically just stick web browsers up here. This really is Microsoft Edge. Somewhere around here earlier, I placed some holograms, but I guess they're not here. The other thing that this is doing besides creating a 3D model that's live all the time is it is also remembering visual landmarks. So right now I'm putting some holograms around, having a fine time, and when I come back here in a year to give this talk again, these will still be here. It's memorizing the visual landmarks, it's building a database, the database is stored in Microsoft's cloud, and they're just there forever. When I go back to my office tomorrow, all the windows that I open will still be there. So it looks really wobbly, but it's not.
Can you make those public?
There's no reason that you couldn't. They haven't done it yet, but this is pretty incredible. So I'll let people try this on after. I'll stay around and let people demo it, as many people as want to, because even from this, it's really hard to appreciate how fantastic this really is. I've actually got remote desktop installed on this, so I've done things where I had my Bluetooth keyboard with me and no computer, and I sat down remote desktop to this machine and installing software. It's not a great idea for writing code because of lag, but it works. This is the real thing as far as augmented reality goes. That's going to make me sick, so I'm going to stop it. So this came about 2 weeks ago. The week after that, there was a special issue of Wired about a company called Magic Leap that Google has put $750 million into in the past 2 years. And they've hired away all of my friends. So I used to know the guy that was the head of augmented reality at Honda. He's now at Magic Leap. Graham Devine, famous game designer, is now at Magic Leap. Noah Falstein, who's game design faculty at NYU, is now at Magic Leap. Facebook, when they bought Oculus, one of the things Mark Zuckerberg said is that screens are going to go away. And this is what he's talking about, that if you have this, I don't need 3 monitors at my workstation anymore. I just stick my documentation windows as holograms in the world, and I don't need all those monitors anymore. Apple bought the company that invented the Kinect for Xbox. And guess what makes all this motion detection stuff work? It's Kinect. It's in this device. It's in my Tango tablet from Google. So I think, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the summer we've got 4 of these things that are at least circulating to the press. Now, so as an academic, that's actually kind of bad news, because if all the problems have been solved and products are coming out, the research is done, right? The technical research to make augmented reality happen is done. What is left to do, however, is to start to think about the human factors. And that's where I really want to come in. How should we design these apps? What should they be like? What are the best practices for this world that's going to be filled with holograms and potentially scary things? So I'm just going to tell you about a couple of projects that we're working on right now. With the Hololens, it puts some holograms around the room, which is already super cool. But one of the things that we've been thinking about is what kind of superpowers can we give people that are wearing these headsets? What are the more out there things that people might want to do? And one of the things that we're trying to do is give people the ability to see around corners. So this is clearly virtual reality. This is not augmented reality. This is a prototype we built about a year ago. And what we were thinking about is, if you're walking around in the world with these glasses on, why are we going to show you the world the way it ordinarily is? Why don't we do something really weird with it? And so we created this this little game where you go around and collect Easter eggs. But what we're really experimenting with is, what happens if we completely change the rules of physics, especially the rules of how light works in this world? So this is a simulation where we are treating light as if, instead of traveling in straight lines, it curves away from you, like lines of magnetic force. And when you do that, you get the ability to see around corners. The other thing you get is motion parallax on rotation. So motion parallax, if you've ever played one of those side-scroller video games where the background moves slowly and the foreground is moving fast, and you'll notice that, okay, I'll look really dumb here. If I move my head left and right, my finger looks like it's moving fast. The stuff that's far away looks like it's moving slow. In real life, you only get parallax motion on translation when you move. You do not get it when you rotate. In this world, you do. And that makes it much easier to quickly explore an environment, because when you're standing in front of the door of a room, you can go like that and you can see the whole room up into the corners near the walls. And we did this experiment that basically showed that. If you have this warped view, you can explore the environment much more quickly. And we showed it at one of the premier virtual reality conferences, and all these famous virtual reality researchers said, well, how long did you have to train the people to get them to use this? And I said, we'll train people. We put the headset on, told them to go. Well, how did you deal with the motion sickness? And I said, being naive idiot that I am, motion sickness? Those of you that have tried the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive know that there's a big problem with something called simulator sickness. Very, very severe motion sickness that can come from virtual environments. And what is interesting to me is it appears that even the premier virtual reality researchers don't really know what does and does not cause it. There's some things that we know for sure cause it. Very rapid head rotation causes it. Letting the person put the camera right next to the wall causes it. Head bob that doesn't match the person's real natural motion. But our warping didn't seem to cause it. So we're actually in the middle of implementing this now in real life as augmented reality. So this is a video that I shot last week. The left-hand side is basically the view from a tablet using Google Cardboard. And then the right-hand view is actually I taped my cell phone to the front. But what you're going to see here is the person is walking around through the world just using their natural motion to navigate. So they're walking around in the real world, and the virtual reality and the real reality match up. The gray part that you see is a 3D scan that we made of the room using this tablet. The red dots that you see are a point cloud. So this also has a Kinect kind of sensor built into it. And we're applying that same warping technique to this model. My students made a bunch of progress. We now have color. We have the entire basement of Benton Hall mapped. We have our Easter egg hunt implemented. So if you want to come up to Miami and see whether it makes you barf or not, that would be very helpful for us. But basically, you can walk around and around in the basement of Benton Hall and collecting Easter eggs using this warped view of the world. So if you haven't heard of this is Google's Project Tango. I'm not going to give you a straight-up demo of this, but this has some of the same capabilities of the Hololens. It can build up and remember a map of the real world, and it uses it as sort of an indoor equivalent of GPS. So as I rotate the tablet or I move it through space, it always knows where it is, which is how we can do this where we make the person's view of the world match up with their view in virtual reality. Here's another project. So I told you I have an interest in ethics. One of the things I'm really interested in is if we're all going around wearing these headsets and augmented reality is telling us to do stuff and trying to draw our attention to stuff or away from stuff, how are we going to notice when the system is malfunctioning? About 3 or 4 years ago, I did an experiment where the goal was to see how long does it take for someone to notice the system is malfunctioning. Ignore the words here, but look at this picture. We basically did a setup where we had very complicated rules for sorting playing cards, and we had an augmented reality system. You wore a headset that had camera on it, and you'd hold up the playing card, and the system would indicate to you where it thought you should put it. So since this is a 2 of diamonds, diamonds, even, goes in the right-hand box, so it's making the right-hand box glow. And so we had the system where after a while, it would intentionally start feeding you bad advice. And what we wanted to know was how long would it take you to notice the bad advice? And I say this was a total fail because actually nobody ever noticed the bad advice. That's actually kind of terrifying to me, right? Okay, that was a little bit of a lie. There was one person. Actually, let me tell the story before I show that. There was one person that noticed. But this person's behavior was really, really interesting. Because here's what the person, now we talked afterwards, there's a debrief. Because there's deception involved in this, I don't tell you that I'm going to lie to you at some point. So afterwards, I have to, fill the person in and let them know what happened. And so when we talked, found out this person was very anti-technology, very conspiracy theory towards technology. And so came in, really, okay, looking for a trick. But here's what this person did. Sorting the cards, sorting the cards, sorting the cards, and gets to the first one where there's a mistake and does a double take. Starts to puts it in the wrong box. Oh, shit. So one thing you may not know, probably a lot of you do, but your conscious thinking moves slower than you think it does. Okay, your conscious thinking moves slower than you think it does. So this person thought that they had double-checked the card, they put it in the wrong box, and then the message arrived, hey dummy, that's the wrong box. And here's what's also really interesting. This person, okay, sorting, comes to another mistake one. Same behavior. So throughout this experiment, we still got this person more than half the time to make the wrong choice, which means this person was not able to make themselves slow down. They knew the system was screwing up. They knew the accuracy was important. And they didn't even trust or like the system, but they couldn't make themselves slow down enough. This is why I tell all the computer science students to stop ducking the humanities courses. Because I started to look for, what's a possible reason that this might be happening? And I found a really interesting part of an answer in a book called Understanding Media by Marshall McLuhan. I don't know if we have anyone in here who's old enough to remember Marshall McLuhan. He was this pretty out there media scholar from the 1960s, but very, very influential among media studies, and very influential on Shepard Fairey, if you know who that is, the artist Shepard Fairey. Has written a bunch about him. But Marshall McLuhan did a remarkable job of predicting how we would react to certain kinds of new technology, like how we would react to Twitter, how we would react to smartphones. A lot of that is presaged in his writing. And one of the things he wrote about was this idea of auto-amputation. I'm not going to carefully explain this quote, but his basic idea is that as the pace of life speeds up and speeds up and speeds up and speeds up, we start to experience points of irritation. And at that point, we've got to make a decision about what to do about that irritation to get rid of it somehow. And there are kind of two main strategies for that. One is a counter-irritant, to come up with something to distract yourself from the irritation. Good example of this, you may have seen this top news item. They had some people that were having minor surgeries, and instead of giving them anesthetic, they had them play a virtual reality game. And what they found is that was more effective than the anesthetic at controlling the person's pain. It's a counter-irritant. It draws your attention away from the irritant. So that's one possibility. But the other possibility is something called auto-amputation. And it's really a grisly, I like that word because it's so grisly that if my eye offends me, I pluck it out. Or if my foot hurts, I cut it off. I don't know if you've ever felt like you really wanted to cut your foot off. I have at times. But Marshall McLuhan means it in the sense of technology, that we have capabilities that we as humans can do, but at some point, as the pace of life or the load that we have to bear gets to a certain point, we say, I'm not going to walk anymore. I'm going to ride my hoverboard, or I'm going to ride my bike. I have colleagues that drive from my building to Starbucks to get coffee 4 blocks. So auto-amputation, we get rid of walking and replace it with the wheel. And so I think part of the potential danger with augmented reality is that we're going to auto-amputate. It is going to give us the ability to do things at such a pace that we are no longer going to be willing to do the oversight on those things. And if you're thinking this sounds like a crazy idea, I thought it was a crazy idea too, but I wrote it up as a poster at the main Augmented Reality conference, and I won the Best Poster Award. So reading humanities and being crazy has kind of been the secret to my success. Now, we are really trying to think, though, about what do we need to do to make these things safe. I'm not satisfied with the answer that people are terrible and they're just going to do terrible things. So we are trying to think about what do we have to do to get people to take the necessary time to use these things safely. And so in the original experiment, one of the things we noticed is that people weren't even looking at the card. They were looking for the augmentations and then putting the card in the box without looking at it. So what happens if we force the person to actually look at the card? What if we put the augmentation on the card instead of on the box? What if we show the person the reasoning? So this is an interface where we show them the rules superimposed on the card, and we gray out everything that is false. So this is an odd card, so we've grayed out the even. It's a spade, so we've grayed out any that doesn't have a spade, and we show you the reasoning. We're focusing on accuracy instead of speed. What if I tell you the main goal is speed? What if I tell you the main goal is accuracy? What if I warn you that the system may make errors and it is your responsibility to catch them? How do those small changes in setup affect people's behavior? This is an experiment that we're running right now, which now you all can't participate in because you're in on the joke. But if you have friends who live in Oxford who are suckers, point them my way. It would be very helpful. So there are so many things I could talk about. I thought I just wanted to give you a little bit of flavor. A couple things I would say. So I've already thanked 84.51 and dunnhumby, whatever they're called now, sorry. And another great supporter of our center has been Hillenbrand Inc. You may know them as the owners of Batesville Casket Company. They're a sort of manufacturing parent company. But one of the things that we do in the center is we do look for contracts for students to work on. So if people have a real interest or business need to learn more about this technology, I'd be happy to talk about that. My email is on here. But I'd also be happy to let a bunch of people try on the Hololens, and I'd be happy to take questions while we do that. Thanks.